America's Voice is coming to iHeartMedia.
Yes, Real America's Voice is now breaking through the white noise of the mainstream media.
Just download the iHeart app and you'll have all of us right at your fingertips.
Scan the QR code and start streaming Rav anywhere you want.
Real America's Voice, available whenever you need us.
It's never been easier to stay connected with the voices you trust.
Rav on iHeart means you can take us with you wherever you go.
This is huge. The truth on iHeart. Ready whenever you are.
From Charlie Kirk to Steve Bannon, Jack Posobiec to Grant Stinchfield, you'll find all your favorite Rav hosts in one place.
You can listen on Spotify, Apple, Pandora, or Amazon. Rav is now available everywhere you get your podcasts. All you need to do is scan the QR code right now.
Download the iHeart app today and get ready for Real America's Voice.
Scan the QR code and join the Rav movement.
Welcome into Special Report. I'm Beau Davidson alongside Emily Finn. We begin today's show with some breaking news that Pope Francis has developed pneumonia in both lungs and his condition remains, quote, complex. He remains hospitalized in Rome. In another top story, severe flooding has already wreaked havoc across Kentucky, leading to over 1,000 rescues as emergency teams continue to race to help people trapped by rising waters. At least 12 people have died, with officials warning the death toll may rise even further.
We also have new details surrounding the Delta Airlines plane crash at Toronto Pearson International Airport. Take a look at the footage as the plane flipped upside down. Just very dramatic, remarkable to see. As of this morning, Delta said 19 people have since been released from the hospital. 3 people, including a child, suffered critical but not life-threatening injuries. The cause of the crash does remain under investigation.
And also new today, an Inspector General audit found that the Social Security Administration mispaid $72 billion over 8 years.
There was an Inspector General audit last year that showed over an 8-year period, the Social Security Administration made almost $72 billion in improper payments, a little less than 1% of payments in that time period. Now, the report also says that most of these improper payments were overpayments, not payments to deceased people or people who didn't qualify to receive these payments. At the same time, Jose, this effort by DOGE is to go through this agency like every other and try to weed out waste and fraud.
Yeah, I mean, and also $72 billion, and that's without a comprehensive search. I mean, that's
wow, $72 billion. Well, for more on all this, let's welcome in George Papadopoulos, co-host of Global View and author of Deep State Target, How I Got Caught in the Crosshairs of the Plot to Bring Down President Trump. George, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Well, George, millions of people that are dead are receiving payments, according to this audit. How did this happen? How did we let it get this bad off?
Well, look at just in a couple of weeks what DOGE has actually found. USAID, let's start with USAID for a second. They're less than 1% of the federal budget, and DOGE and the Trump administration found out that billions of dollars in taxpayer dollars were being sent abroad for regime change and domestically to finance and fund leftist ideology, to undermine conservative values, traditions, and to try to spread propaganda, disinformation, and misinformation against candidate Trump, MAGA, and the President of the United States of America. That's exactly what the whole Politico scandal was all about, where our tax dollars are actually financing their own subscriptions. Moving forward to this is just another example of entitlement spending gone awry, wasted, and spent in an unwise manner that has contributed to not only our evolving and massive global public debt, but also is going to contribute to our growing deficit that we're also going to have with various other countries, because it's affecting the domestic economy. People who have been dead for decades, years, are still receiving Social Security checks. This has to stop. And if it wasn't for DOGE and President Trump, this type of waste, corruption, and government spending would have continued unabated. The elites would have been, their pockets would have been lined up, and the working man and woman in this country would have continued to suffer.
Absolutely. I mean, it is really impressive to see how much Doge has been able to accomplish just in a few weeks here. It's almost mind-boggling that we're so overdue for these types of audits. I do want to go back to Social Security for a moment. We're seeing reports that this morning, the Social Security Commissioner has stepped down from her role for refusing to give up sensitive information to Doge staffers. Do you expect that we're going to see more high-profile resignations soon as Doge continues their audits of federal agencies?
I think it's in the it's in America's interest to have government transparency and accountability. When you have high-profile directors or executives or political figures who are fighting back against audits, against transparency, and against showcasing to the American public where their taxpayers' dollars are going, I think that's a problem. I think that's an insidious problem. I think it's pernicious. And I think individuals like this person who are fighting against the audit and more transparency likely have something to hide. This is why Doge is important. This is exactly why Donald Trump is keen on appointing patriotic Americans, people who are there to serve the American people and abide by the Constitution in critical roles, including things like this, because when people were out there for their own pocketbooks and not putting the American people first, this is exactly what got us into the type of economic crisis we're in right now and the type of wasteful spending and corruption that is rampant throughout the government system today.
And George, on the same wavelength of Doge, let's get your reaction to this. The White House has come out with a statement clarifying Elon Musk's role, saying he is a senior advisor to the president and is not an employee of Doge. Why do you think that Elon Musk's proximity to the president is raising so many questions?
Elon Musk is just another type of person, patriotic person who did not need this job. He's a billionaire. He was living a wonderful life, running probably the most successful private company in the entire world, just like President Trump, who had an incredibly successful company, wonderful family, billionaire, enjoying his life. He did not need to be president of the United States of America. So I think it's exactly because President Trump and Elon Musk are outsiders who did not need the job, who are not beholden to special interests and cannot be bought out by the special interests, and that their only interest is to serve the American public and wean out the type of rot and corruption that we're discussing here today that makes them this type of threat. That's exactly why Time Magazine has tried to create some space between President Trump and Elon Musk, why Politico, some of these other leftist publications have sought to do it. President Trump is smart, Elon Musk is smart, and the American people back both of them in unison to make America great again, to stop the corruption, to expose the wrongdoers, and to get this country back on track.
Well, you know, George, at least 14 states have come together as part of a lawsuit against Musk, Trump, and Doge, saying the Tesla CEO's role is unconstitutional because he has not been confirmed by the Senate. Now, I would think that the reason why the left is so up in arms about Musk is because he's uncovering agency by agency all of the improprieties and slush fund that the Democrats had. But Elon Musk was a Democrat before, so why is it so bad that he's uncovering all of the waste, fraud, and abuse that are in all of these agencies? Isn't that what's good for, what they say is what's good for the goose is good for the gander?
What's good for the goose is certainly good for the gander, except that the goose is getting the payouts. And in this case, let's call the geese the Democrats. And that's exactly why Elon Musk, a former Democrat, and look, a lot of these senior executives, senior business leaders who are now either advising President Trump formally or informally, or part of the administration formally or not formally, were former Democrats until they woke up. They saw how far left the Democrat Party went. It became something completely unrecognizable. The country was facing a simultaneous political, security, and economic crisis. And it took former Democrats like Musk, like others, including Bezos, to get on board finally and to say enough is enough. This is not the America that I was raised in. This is not the America that I made my billions in. And if we continue down the line that the Democrat Party wanted us to go down, not only would we have crossed the Rubicon of economic disarray, but our values, our traditions, and what made America what it is, including the rule of law, the Constitution, and our functioning as a republic, would have ceased to exist. And that's exactly why what's happening is happening and why they're pushing back against former allies who have changed their tune and are now supporting MAGA.
Absolutely. I mean, that's probably why the White House came out with that statement, just to reiterate that senior advisors don't have to be confirmed. Trump is still trying to push through his other nominees. His nominee to serve as FBI director, Kash Patel, is getting closer and closer to getting the support from the Senate to take on this new role. I believe there is a vote scheduled for Thursday for him. Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn said in a recent interview that she believes Democrats like Congressman Adam Schiff and others are fearful of Patel, citing alleged involvement in Russiagate. What do you think that Patel could uncover?
Certainly, Kash Patel is a good friend. He made his name uncovering a lot of the illegal activities of the FBI and the Democrat Party, going all the way up to Hillary Clinton, while he was an associate to Congressman Devin Nunes, and then, of course, later became a high-level Pentagon figure and a Trump administration official. So I think the reason you have people like Senator Schiff, I should say, and other Democrats so fearful of Kash Patel as leader of FBI is because they have a lot to hide. It goes exactly to how this person at the Social Security Administration, other high-profile Democrats don't want light to be exhibited in the secrets of Washington, D.C. I think Kash Patel is going to be appointed. I think he's going to be confirmed. And when he is, just like when President Trump was running on a campaign of promises made, promises kept, I think Kash Patel will do exactly the same thing when he's appointed FBI director, when he's confirmed FBI director. He will expose the corruption that went into Russiagate. He will expose the corruption that went into the past FBI leadership. And he will finally revamp the preeminent law enforcement agency of the world, redirect the mission of the FBI towards combating violent criminals, terrorists, and keeping Americans safe instead of persecuting Americans just for having different political beliefs.
Now, George, really quick, we only have about a minute left with you, but before we let you go, you recently launched a new podcast with your wife. It's called Global Views. Tell us more about what our viewers can expect to see on your show and how they can tune in to watch.
Well, thank you for that. The show actually launched a couple of weeks ago. Our first guest was Steve Bannon. We've had incredible guests, including Bannon, Roger Stone, Trish Regan, others. And basically what the show is trying to do is to provide an outlet to bring guests from various parts of the world, not only the United States, from various industries, including culture, fashion, business, policy, and to really showcase the impact of the Trump victory this past election, how it's going to impact culture, business, finance, policy. And I think it's an incredible show. I know a lot of people have been beginning to tune in, and really appreciate the promotion for it.
Absolutely. Well, George Papadopoulos, thank you so much for coming on the show and letting us know all of the comings and goings of what's happening with you and your new show. So congratulations on that, sir, and we'll see you soon.
Much appreciated. Thanks.
Thanks, George. And coming up, now that the border is under control, inflation and the economy are the #1 concern among Americans. We'll get into those details when we return. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Special Report. We want to bring you right to Mar-a-Lago, where President Trump is signing an executive order. Let's tune in.
Uncovered by Doge and the people at Doge. These are young, often young, but super brilliant people, incredible computer scientists and other things. And they're finding levels of fraud and waste and abuse like I think nobody ever thought possible. But before we do that, I just want to ask Will to come over. I've just finished signing some executive orders, and if we could start with that, Will, you might want to come up here and just explain what we did. Thank you.
Good afternoon, y'all. A short while ago, President Trump signed three items. The first is an executive order relating to the affordability and availability of in vitro fertilization and other fertility treatments. These are treatments that have become unaffordable for many Americans, or have been unaffordable for many Americans. And the executive order is a directive to the Domestic Policy Council to examine ways to make IVF and other fertility treatments more affordable for more Americans. The second item that we signed was a presidential memorandum imposing radical transparency requirements on government departments and agencies, in keeping with President Trump and the administration's broader commitment to governmental transparency. What this presidential memorandum would do is require, as waste, fraud, and abuse is uncovered, as programs are canceled, and ultimately as taxpayer dollars are saved, this presidential memorandum would require departments and agencies to make all of the details of that freely available to the public. Lastly, we have another executive order that President Trump signed relating to independent agencies. This executive order would establish important oversight functions in the Office of Management and Budget and its subsidiary office, OIRA, supervising independent agencies and many of their actions, and also reestablishes the longstanding norm that only the President or the Attorney General can speak for the United States when stating an opinion as to what the law is.
Thank you very much, Will. That was the primary purpose of this conference, to explain that they're all very important in their own way. Fertilization, I've been saying that we're going to do what we have to do, and I think the women and families, husbands, are very appreciative of it. But that was it. I do want to say while I'm up here, I've been contacted by some of the biggest companies in the world, and because of what we're doing economically and through tariffs and taxes and incentives, they want to come back into the United States. And we'll be announcing various very large companies, the biggest actually, and they'll be coming back, having to do with chips and having to do also with cars and lots of other things. We're going to be announcing some very, very big momentous decisions are being made by companies all around the world, the biggest, and they want to come back into the U.S. Car plants are being canceled in other locations now because they want to build them here. And you read about a couple, not that I want to mention names or anything, but you read about a couple of big ones in Mexico just got canceled because they're going to be building them in the United States. And that's very simply because of what we're doing with respect to taxes, tariffs, and incentives. And I think it's a very important thing. And you'll be seeing this over the next probably over the next 2 years, to be honest, but you're going to see a lot of it over the next couple of weeks. A lot of big ones are going to be announcing. And so while we're here, I guess we can take a couple of quick questions. Go ahead, please. Please.
Mr. President, have you decided specifically what the auto tariff rate should be?
Yeah, I probably will tell you that on April 2nd, but it'll be in the neighborhood of 25%.
And pharmaceuticals?
It'll be 25% and higher, and it'll go very substantially higher over a course of a year. But we want to give them time to come in because, as you know, when they come into the United States and they have their plant or factory here, there is no tariff. So we want to give them a little bit of a chance. Yes, thank you.
The EU representative is going to be here in Washington next week. Starting tomorrow, he's going to be meeting with Bassett and Greer and what can the EU do to sort of avoid the reciprocal tariffs that we've talked about? And you know, you've talked a lot about the VAT. Do you expect them to reduce that?
Well, they did already, as I understand it, reduce their car tariff all the way down to what we have. And a lot of that will take place, and I think some won't do it and some will do it. But the EU had a 10% tax on cars, and now they have a 2.5% tax, which is the exact same as us. So already we've saved a tremendous amount. That would be great. If everybody would do that, then we'd all be on the same playing field. Because essentially what we're doing with the tariffs is, they charge us, we charge them, same amount. And it's called reciprocal, actually. And whatever they charge us, we're charging them. And so the EU is, I appreciate that they did this, but, the EU has been very unfair to us. We have a deficit of $350 billion. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm products. They don't take almost anything. They take very little. And we're going to have to straighten that out. And we will. I have no doubt about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Russia talks, your impression of how they went today, and if you're perhaps more confident or less confident of the deal after what happened today?
Well, much more confident. They were very good. Russia wants to do something. They want to stop the savage barbarianism. I mean, what's going on over there? It's soldiers are being killed by the thousands on a weekly basis. It's ridiculous. And they're not American soldiers. They're Russian soldiers, and they're Ukrainian soldiers largely, although a lot of Koreans have been killed, as you know. Quite a bit of them have been killed. They came over to fight, and a large portion have been wiped out. But we want to end it. It's a senseless war. It should have never happened, would have never happened if I was president, and it's a shame to see it. And I see pictures that you don't see, but I see pictures of fields that look just horrible. It looks like Gettysburg. If you see the old pictures of Gettysburg, it's soldiers lying all over the field, body parts all over the field. They're all dead. And this is going on a daily basis. It's a horrible thing. Both Russia and Ukraine, they're losing thousands and thousands of soldiers, and a lot of people have been killed too. I think that's one of the things that you'll see historically, and you'll see later on as it goes along. I think people are going to be surprised at how many people, not only soldiers, have been killed in Ukraine. A lot more people than you think. Yeah, please.
President Trump, as part of a peace deal with Putin, would you be willing to consider removing all American troops from Europe?
Well, nobody's asked me to do that, so I don't think we'd have to do that. I wouldn't want to do that. But that question's never really come up. Yeah. Please.
Sir, do you support stationing European peacekeeping troops in Ukraine as part of this peace deal?
If they want to do that, that's great. I'm all for it. If they want to do that, I think that'd be fine. I mean, I know France has mentioned it. Others have mentioned it. UK has mentioned it. But if we have a peace deal, I think having troops over there from the standpoint of Europe, we won't have to put any over there because, we're very far away. But having troops over there would be fine. I would not object to it at all. We're talking about this now, peace. We have either a ceasefire or a peace itself, and we're looking to do both. We'd start off with the ceasefire, and if they want to do that. I know France was willing to do that, and I thought that was a beautiful gesture. Yeah, please.
Any message for Ukrainians who, after 3 years of fighting, might feel betrayed or disappointed at not having a seat at these initial talks in Saudi Arabia?
I think I'm really disappointed in what's happened. I've been watching this for 3 years. It's a war that would have never happened if I was president, and I've been watching these people being killed at levels that you've rarely seen, not even close, since the Second World War. And I'm very disappointed. I hear that, they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago without the loss of much land, very little land, without the loss of any lives, and without the loss of cities that are just laying on their sides. You have those magnificent golden domes that are shattered, will never be replaced. You can't replace them. 1,000-year-old domes that are so beautiful, you can't replace that. The whole civilization has changed because of what. So when they're worried about not being seated, you mean somebody that should have gone in and made a deal a long time ago, You could have made a deal. This is one that could have made a deal. There was no talk of this during the Trump administration. Putin would have never, ever done it. And by the way, we wouldn't have had October 7th. You know that. We wouldn't have had October 7th either in Israel. And we wouldn't have had that mess that's going on over there. It's like we have great fire people here. We're putting out fires. All over the world we're putting out fires. So that wouldn't have happened. And you know what else wouldn't have happened? Inflation. Because it was caused really by the cost of energy going through the roof because of their bad energy policies and also their spending, their terrible spending, wasteful spending on the Green New Scam. It's a scam. It's a whole big scam. Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. I'm going to ask you, what would it take for you to reconsider restriction on the Associated Press? And secondly, some of your advisors are concerned with the Associated Press's style guide using language and giving guidance to not use words like illegal immigrant or to use phrases like gender affirmative care. They're concerned about that being an approach of liberalism in the language of press rights violations. We share those concerns.
Well, I do think that some of the phrases that they want to use are ridiculous, and I think, frankly, they become obsolete, especially in the last 3 weeks, because many things have happened in the last 3 weeks, and I didn't know about that, but I would say that if they want to use certain phrases like that, and I guess some are okay, but many aren't, but the Associated Press just refuses to go with what the law is and what is taking place. It's called the Gulf of America now. It's not called the Gulf of Mexico any longer. I have the right to do it, just like we have the right to do Mount McKinley, and nobody's even challenging that. But only the essentially, it's primarily the Associated Press, and I don't know what they're doing, but I just say that we're going to keep them out until such time as they agree that it's the Gulf of America. We're very proud of this country, and we want it to be the Gulf of America. Now, the Associated Press, as you know, has been very, very wrong on the election, on Trump and the treatment of Trump, and other things having to do with Trump and Republicans and conservatives. And they're doing us no favors, and I guess I'm not doing them any favors. That's the way life works. But, you know, thank you for the question. Who are you with? Very good question. Thank you. Yes.
We're hearing that Russia wants to force Ukraine to hold new elections in order to sign any kind of a peace deal. Is that something that the U.S. would ever support?
Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine. Well, we have martial law, essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating, and where a country has been blown to smithereens. You got most of the cities are laying on their sides. The buildings are collapsed. It looks like a massive demolition site. The whole, I mean, so many of the cities. I mean, they haven't done it in Kiev because I guess they don't want to shoot too many rockets in there. They've done it 20%, but they haven't done it 100%. If they wanted to do it 100%, it would probably happen very quickly. But you have cities that are absolutely decimated. And yeah, I would say that, you know, when they want a seat at the table, you could say the people have to, wouldn't the people of Ukraine have to say, like, you know, it's been a long time since we've had an election. That's not a Russia thing. That's something coming from me and coming from many other countries also. You know, Ukraine is being just wiped out. Look at what's happening to the cities. There are cities, there's not even a building standing. It's a massive, you talk about Gaza. I mean, it's literally, these cities look like Gaza. Actually, many have, percentage-wise, more buildings knocked down than in Gaza. So, you know, people are tired of it. People want to see something happen. And, you know, the other thing that it's been bothering me for a long time, because I solved the problem with NATO. They paid hundreds of billions of dollars into the funds of NATO when I said you got to pay, because the United States was paying for European countries, and then they take advantage of us on trade. But I've seen it. Look, they have to pay. They have to find out, where is the money going to? We have, I believe President Zelensky said last week that he doesn't know where half of the money is that we gave him. Well, we gave them, I believe, $350 billion, but let's say it's something less than that, but it's a lot. And we have to equalize with Europe, because Europe has given us given a very much smaller percentage than that. I think Europe has given $100 billion, and we've given, let's say, 300 plus. And it's more important for them than it is for us. We have an ocean in between, and they don't. But where is all the money that's been given? Where is it going? And I've never seen an accounting of it. We give hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't see any accounting. So I want to see peace. Look, you know why I want? Because I don't want all these people killed anymore. I'm looking at people that are being killed, and they're Russian and Ukrainian people, but they're people. Doesn't matter where they're from on the whole planet. And I think I have the power to end this war. And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. What he was so bad for this. He was so bad, so pathetic, so sad. But with all of that being said, look, it is what it is. When I left, there was no chance that this could have happened. But it happened because we had incompetent leadership at many different levels. But when you see what's taking place in Ukraine with millions of people killed, including the soldiers, millions of people killed, a big percentage of their cities knocked down to the ground. I don't know how anybody even lives there. You know, when they say they took a poll and Zelensky's at 4%, who's living there? You know, I mean, it's hard to believe that people live there. Their cities are being knocked down. And this is something that would have never happened. And by the way, for 4 years, it didn't happen. It was never going to happen. Go ahead.
One follow-up question.
How would you counter the perception, because Russia's pushing to the side, say they don't really hold true elections, that would be a capitulation of some sort? How would you guard against potentially Russia installing a puppet government? And then finally, how would that new election have an impact on getting Zelensky to sign the rare earth minerals deal?
Look, you have leadership, and I like him personally. He's fine. But I don't care about personally. I care about getting the job done. You have leadership now that's allowed a war to go on that should have never even happened, even without the United States. Look, we had a president who was grossly incompetent. He had no idea what he was doing. He said some very stupid things, like going in for portions and all of the things. He made a lot of bad statements, but he's grossly incompetent, and I think everyone knew that. This is something that should have never happened, would have never happened. And I used to discuss it with Putin. President Putin and I would talk about Ukraine. It was the apple of his eye, I will tell you that. But there was never a chance of him going in. And I told him, you better not go in. Don't go in. Don't go in. And he understood that. He understood it fully. But I'm only interested. I want to see if I can save maybe millions of lives. This could even end up in a World War III. I mean, to be honest with you, you've been hearing now Europe is saying, well, I think we're going to go in and we're going to go. All of a sudden, you're going to end up in World War III over something that should have never happened. And, you know, it's a very sad situation. Yeah, please.
In a court filing, the White House said that Elon Musk is not a Doge employee and has no authority to make decisions. Can you clarify for us today what his exact role is?
Elon is, to me, a patriot. So, you know, you could call him an employee, you could call him a consultant, you could call him whatever you want. But he's a patriot. I mean, look at the kind of things I just said. Just write it down, just in case that question got asked, right? And which I'm surprised it took so long, actually. But you know what? Ukraine's a bigger deal because people are dying by the thousands a week, thousands. But look at this: from 90 to 99, Social Security, 6,054,000 people. Well, that's okay. Maybe that's possible. You know, 90 to 99, maybe it's possible. It's a lot of people, though, with that. But people that live to 100 to 109, 4,734,000. Wow, that's a lot. That means over 100 years old. They're 4 million people. I don't know too many. I know people that are doing great in their 90s, but not too many people over 100. But over 120, from 120 years old, people that are 120 years old up to 129. 3,472,000 people. Wow. You know, that can't possibly be, because the record is like, I think it's one person, a woman, lived to 127, but they have 3,472. Okay, but now we're going really in. People from 130 years old to 139-year-old, 3,936,000. Wow. I wonder if people are getting paid with all this. I mean, are these checks? And that's what we're checking right now. People from 140 years old to 149 years old, 3,542,000. 140 years old and beyond. Now we're really going, because we're looking to break the record by 25 years. People from 150 years old to 159 years old, 1,345,000. These are in the, by the way, these are in the computer files. This is what they do well. They're super. I asked Elon, who are these Doge people? He said they're super brilliant computer people and they love the country. It's simple. Wait a minute. People from 160 years old to 169 years, 121,000. So 160-year-old people. 170 to 179,000, 6,087. But now, let's go into the real numbers. From 200 to 209 years old, 879 people. From 210 years old, I haven't met any of them. And if I did, I would bless them. I would worship the ground they walk on. 210 to 219 years, 866. From 220 years old to 229 years old, 1,039. And then you have two people. From 240 years old to 249 years old, one person. And there's one person that's 360 years old. That's just that. And then, where's the money being spent, right? Let's go into that for just a second. $520 million for a consultant on the environment. It's called Environmental, Social, and Governance. Investments in Africa and mobilize private sector resources. $520 million. Somebody got $520 million for an environmental, sounds like an environmental study. I've always been one that paid a lot of money for my environmental studies, but I paid like $50,000, not $520 million. $520 million for ESG. $25 million to promote biodiversity, conservation, and promote licit livelihoods by developing socially responsible behavior in the country of Colombia. Well, it's nice, $25 million going to Colombia for something that nobody ever heard of. $40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. $40 million. $42 million for Johns Hopkins, great place, to research and drive social and behavior change in Uganda. $42 million. What about us? What about social change in our country? $70 million for a center at Purdue to research university-sourced, evidence-based solutions to developmental challenges. I mean, these are massive numbers on things that nobody ever heard about. $10 million for Mozambique voluntary medical male circumcisions. $10 million for circumcisions in another country. $9.7 million for UC Berkeley to develop a cohort of Cambodian youth with enterprise-driven skills. In other words, let's teach them something about enterprise. What about our people? Can't we teach them about enterprise? $2.3 million for strengthening independent voices in Cambodia. $32 million to the Prague Civil Society Center, which is a very liberal group of people. Wonder how much of that money came back to the people that approved it. $14 million for improving public procurement in Serbia. $486 million to the Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening, including $22 million for inclusive and participatory political process in Moldova, and $21 million for voter turnout in India. Well, why are we giving $21 million to India? They got a lot of money. They're one of the highest taxing countries in the world in terms of us. We can hardly get in there because their tariffs are so high. I have a lot of respect for India. I have a lot of respect for the Prime Minister. He just left, as you know, 2 days ago. But we're giving $21 million for voter turnout. It's voter turnout in India. What about, like, voter turnout here? Oh, we've done that, I guess. We did $500 million, didn't we? It's called the lockboxes. $20 million for fiscal federalism in Nepal. Listen to these numbers. This is all fraud. $19 million for biodiversity conservation in Nepal. $1.5 million for voter confidence. We want to give them confidence in Liberia. $14 million for social cohesion in Mali. $2.5 million for inclusive democracies in South Africa. $47 million for improving learning outcomes in Asia. Asia's doing very well. They're doing a lot better than we do in the schools, aren't they? $2 million to develop sustainable recycling models to increase socioeconomic cohesion among marginalized communities in Kosovo and Eskali and in Egypt. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. I could, by the way, I could read this all day long. I could go on all day long, and you'll see hundreds of billions of dollars, and we're doing it. But when I saw the Social Security numbers, I said, wow, that's really something. So we have, let's just go above 100 years old. We have millions and millions of people over 100 years old. Everybody knows that's not so. We have a very corrupt country, and it's a sad thing to say, but we're figuring it out. Now, the good thing about Social Security and what I read is if you take all of those numbers off, because they're obviously fraudulent or incompetent, but if you take all of those millions of people off Social Security, all of a sudden we have a very powerful Social Security with people that are 80 and 70 and 90, but not 200 years old. You know, so it's a very positive thing. How about over here? Yeah, please.
DOJ investigations, the head of Social Security.
Got fired. I think got fired. You know, when you fire somebody, they always resign, and then they say, we resigned. But when you have numbers like that, I think really it's got fired. They have to get fired. Who would keep them? How could you have numbers like this? Now, the big thing is, how many of these people got paid? Were they getting paid? Were they getting paid? How many of them were getting paid Social Security? Because if that's the case, it's a massive fraud. We'll have to call those great Palm Beach police into this situation, right? You guys would figure that out very quickly. But how many of them are being paid? I mean, maybe millions of them, but it's a total fraud. Also, a lot of illegal immigrants are in Social Security that shouldn't be there. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, there was a big wave of probationary federal workers who were fired over the weekend. Some of these workers focused on nuclear weapons security were immediately rehired. Do you have any concerns about how these terminations have worked?
No, not at all. I think we have to just do what we have to do. It's, you know, you're going to... it's amazing what's been found right now. It's amazing. If we feel that in some cases they'll fire people and then they'll put some people back, not all of them, because a lot of people were let go. Don't forget, I got elected on the basis of making our government stronger and smaller, because we have millions of people that obviously they're paying millions of people that shouldn't be paid, and that has also to do with workers. Yeah, please. No, go ahead. Actually, New York Times.
Mr. President, given your concerns about corruption, you said that if there were any conflicts of interest with Elon Musk, you wouldn't let him anywhere near it.
That's right.
DOJ and SpaceX employees are now working directly at the Federal Aviation Administration and the Defense Department, agencies that have billions of dollars in contracts with Musk's companies or that directly regulate these companies. How is that not a conflict of interest?
Well, I mean, I'm just hearing about it, and if there is, and he told me before I told him, but obviously I will not let there be any conflict of interest. He's done an amazing job. They've revealed, in fact, he's going to be on tonight, a big show called Sean Hannity at 9 o'clock, and he's on and I'm on, and we talk about a lot of different things. And any conflicts, I told Elon, any conflicts, you can't have anything to do with that. So anything to do with possibly even space, we won't let Elon partake in that. Yeah, please.
On immigration, sir, you said you would be sending the worst to Guantanamo Bay. What we're finding out is that there are a lot of low-risk migrants who don't have a criminal background who are also being sent. Are you thinking about this differently now?
No, they're going to be brought back to their countries. And with some persuasion, every one of those countries, everyone in the, as you know, every country is taking the people back. So some of them are going to be brought back to, many of them, any of them that are low risk, as you say, are going to be brought back to their countries.
Can you give us a bit of an update on where you stand with Venezuela? It's oil. There's basically a monthly license that consumers.
Well, we had Venezuela on the run, and it looked like that was going to be very good. And when Biden came in, as he always does, he screws it up. And they started buying millions and millions and millions of dollars of oil, billions of dollars actually, of oil, and it gave them a new lease, a new really lease on life. But we'll see. We had some pretty good discussions with a lot of people within our government and the United States government that are involved in that. And Venezuela's a little bit early, but, you know, we were not buying from Venezuela when Biden came in for whatever reason. Instead of just taking the beautiful, as I call it, liquid gold, we have more than anybody. They started paying a fortune to Venezuela, and we're looking at that, actually. Why did they do that? Why were they doing that? Why would they go to the enemy and give them billions and billions of dollars? Now, with that being said, as you know, Venezuela has said very strongly they will not take any illegal immigrant, any of the people that they sent over to us. They sent their gangs, probably the worst gang anywhere in the world, as bad as MS-13, maybe worse, and they came out of the jails of Venezuela. They emptied their jails into our country, and they said, we'll never take them back. Well, they took them back, and they're taking them back, and they are taking them back rapidly. They were sending a lot of people to Venezuela. They said they wouldn't take them back, and they are taking back. But we're looking at Venezuela very seriously, and we're going to be able to. Don't forget, I've only been here for 3 weeks.
Just a little clarity on, are you inclined to continue to allow Venezuela, through, I think, Chevron or oil companies, to export those petroleum products, or are you
maybe
trying to hold back?
Yeah, maybe not. We're looking at that now. I just got here. When I left, they weren't doing anything. They were ready to go. We give up. And then Biden came along and he gave them literally billions of dollars. I couldn't believe it, actually. And we have so much under our feet, liquid gold. We have so much, and it was pretty amazing. So we're looking at that whole situation, why he did it. All right, how about one more? Yeah, please.
What can you tell us about the CIA drone flights over Mexico? Is this the next step in the war against the cartels? Do they have authority to take legal action?
Mexico has allowed a tremendous number of people to go through their country into ours, and even people coming from Mexico, and illegals, totally illegal. They've allowed people to empty jails into Mexico and then let them come through with this totally ridiculous open border policy of the Biden administration. So millions of people have come in, and hundreds of thousands, and actually millions, are criminals. They came in from jails all over the world. They'd release them into Mexico, and they come into our country. And they also came in from Canada, by the way, large numbers through Canada. In fact, when we closed up the one border, they came in through the other border. So Canada is not an uninterested party. But I will say this. We're dealing with Mexico. I have a very good relationship with Mexico, but I think Mexico is largely run by the cartels, and that's a sad thing to say. And if they wanted help with that, we'd give them help. But Mexico, if you look at what's gone on with Mexico for years now, but now especially, it's run by the cartels, and they've allowed millions of people to come into our country from jails and prisons of other countries from all over the world, not just South America, Africa, Asia, all over, a lot from the Congo in Africa, a lot. They opened their jails, they came in through Mexico, and we have some of the worst criminals coming in from the Congo and other places. So it's not just South America, and it's not just Venezuela, but they opened their jails. And you know, the crime rates in Venezuela and other places all over the world has gone way down. You know why? Because they've given us their prisoners, they've given us their drug lords and their gang members And it's hard to believe that we accepted this. It's hard to believe that we allowed open borders, and we're taking in, hundreds of thousands and millions of people coming in from all over the world that are absolute stone-cold criminals. In fact, 11,088 murderers, and many of those people have murdered more than one person. Why are they giving us these people, and why are we taking these people under Biden? You had a border czar that never went to the border. Happened to be a vice president, never went to the border, never called the border people. I call them all the time. I speak to them all the time. But here's the good news. We have the most secure border we've ever had right now. As secure and even more secure than I had it 4 years ago. And the Border Patrol's doing incredible. ICE is doing incredible. Tom Homan's unbelievable. And Kristi Noem has been just working very, very hard. Very, very hard. And we have the best numbers we've ever had, and we're going to keep it that way. And we're going to find out how a thing like this could have happened to our country, because who would allow this to happen? What they've done to our country is so sad. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, President, before the end of the month. Thank you,
And we were just listening into President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. He signed 3 executive orders today and then took a lot of questions from the press, starting out talking a lot about the war in Ukraine and the negotiations that are ongoing with Russia to try to come to some kind of a ceasefire over there. He had said many times that President Biden was grossly incompetent, that he didn't know what was going on, and that if he would have been in office over the past 3 years, that this war would have never happened in the first place. Then spent a lot of time talking about Doge as well, the Department of Government Efficiency. Some headlines today about Elon Musk, the White House coming out and saying that he is in fact not a Doge employee. Instead, he is a senior advisor to the president. There was a question about that during that press conference right there, where President Trump said that Elon Musk is a patriot, and then read off a very long list of all of the fraud that Doge has already been able to uncover in just the 3 weeks of this second administration. Beau, I want to bring you in on this. It was almost funny listening to him talk about the dumb things that American taxpayer dollars go towards, because you think, oh my gosh, how is this so overdue? How has this been going on for so long and we haven't uncovered this? But it's really not funny if you think about it. It's a complete waste.
I know we were sitting here laughing, and it's really not a laughing matter. It's funny the way he delivers it, but the fraud and waste, money for circumcisions in Mozambique, voter confidence in Liberia, and as he mentioned, what about voter confidence here in the United States? What about that? He keeps pointing to the fact we've given all this money out overseas into foreign countries when we should be focused right here on America, which is exactly why we had this whole America First agenda. He said, I've never met a 210-year-old person, but if I do, I sure would love to meet them. 210 years old, people 130 to 149 years old, $3 million went to that. That's Social Security fraud. And those 3 executive orders, Emily, I want to focus on those because the first one is about in vitro fertilization, or IVF. He wants to make that more affordable and more accessible. And I looked at this, and back in a town hall in October of 2024, it was all female, that town hall, he called himself the father of IVF. This goes back even to August of 2024 when he said that he would support free IVF treatment. So I think that's a really unique thing that he's doing for women today and couples out there who want to be able to have a baby. I think that's significant, and he's codifying it right now into law.
It is really great to see, Beau. He is getting so much done, even just in a short amount of time of this administration. But we do want to move on to other top headlines today. Most Americans feel the United States is heading in a more positive direction with President Trump leading the way, yet the price of gold has been going up. We turn to Birch Gold Group's precious metal specialist, Philip Patrick, for the answers. Welcome back to the show, Philip.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Absolutely, Philip. Well, gold has been in the news quite a bit lately with its recent all-time highs. What is driving the gold price right now?
It is. Look, we've set 40 record highs throughout 2024, several record highs already this year. In 25, we're up 11%, and that's on top of the 42% growth we saw in gold last year. Ultimately, what's driving it is demand, right? And central banks are really leading the way. They bought more than 1,000 tons of gold for the 3rd consecutive year. So we've seen the 3 biggest years of central bank gold buying in history, one right after the other. Now, for me, I think the most powerful dynamic affecting gold's price is currency, and specifically the dollar. We can't forget that over the last 4 years under Biden, the Fed printed more money than ever before in American history combined, On top of that, his weaponization of the dollar in 2022 directly resulted in a 5-fold growth of central bank gold buying. It's not just the banks, it's investment demand, it's technology demand. In fact, the only sector where demand didn't grow for gold was in the jewelry sector, which quite understandably, given the global situation.
Well, it's great to hear that it's growing so much, but there has been a lot of talk recently about disruptions in the gold market. What exactly is going on with that?
Yeah, it's been big news in the precious metals industry. Obviously, we're talking about unprecedented demand, and it's being driven a lot domestically in the US. Refiners and traders at the moment are trying to import as much bullion as possible in anticipation, of potential tariffs and potential volatility. What this led to, though, was a liquidity crunch in London, right? The hub of global gold trade. A few days ago, one of the world's largest refineries informed its customers that the London warehouses were empty, and essentially the London gold market was dry of liquidity. In other words, there's no gold that London can deliver. Concerningly, the Bank of England is now reaching out to other central banks to see if they will lend national gold that's being stored in London. But we're talking about staggering numbers, right? 20 million ounces of gold are traded daily in the London bullion market. That's a year's worth of physical production traded every single week. So the big concern now, 96% of the gold being traded in London and New York markets has no physical reality whatsoever. It's simply a financial contract. The worry is once the 4% of real physical gold has been delivered, what's going to happen? You know, we're expecting a massive liquidity squeeze, a shortage of physical metal, and historically that leads to a price expansion. So an interesting time in the precious metals market.
Well, Philip, I know there's a lot of confidence, renewed confidence now that the Trump administration is going to hopefully turn the American economy around. What's the case for diversifying with gold if we don't expect an economic crisis like maybe we were expecting in the last 4 years, or had Kamala Harris actually won?
I mean, that would have been the reason to put everything into gold. And I'm certainly feeling much more confident today. And listen, Trump and Elon are doing the right things, right? I just watched Trump talk. You know, we're looking at efficiency. We're looking at curbing spending. They're looking for opportunities to increase revenue, to boost domestic industries. They're threatening the BRICS now with retaliation. So they understand the problems. Here's the thing, though. A lot of this is going to be out of their hands, right? We have to remember we are still dependent on global investors continuing to finance the $36 trillion of debt that we have already. Let's not forget, 1 out of every $5 in government debt is financed by foreign investors. So Trump and the team at the moment, they are walking a tightrope, right? They're trying to fuel economic growth, and they're trying to do it with borrowed money. They don't have a choice. Now, if anyone can pull it off, they can, but it's difficult, right? Striking the right balance between short-term pain and long-term prosperity, it's not likely, but it's possible, and we're hoping for the best. But if they pull this off, we have to understand they're going to bring us back from a position, from a debt standpoint, from a currency standpoint, that no nation in history has recovered from. So I think everybody needs to be thinking about how to hedge their exposure. We have insurance for our homes, for our cars, for our health, and I think precious metals will act as a form of portfolio insurance. So still very important.
Well, thank you so much for being on Special Report, Phil. We always love talking to you.
Thank you for having me, guys.
And thank you to you, our viewers, for spending this hour with us. We will see you tomorrow. Stay tuned for War Room.
and we heard you, America.
Real America's Voice is coming to iHeartMedia.
Yes, Real America's Voice is now breaking through the white noise of the mainstream media.
Just download the iHeart app and you'll have all of us right at your fingertips.
Scan the QR code and start streaming Rav anywhere you want.
Real America's Voice, available whenever you need us.
It's never been easier to stay connected with the voices you trust.
Rav on iHeart means you can take us with you wherever you go.
This is huge. The truth on iHeart. Ready whenever you are.
From Charlie Kirk to Steve Bannon, Jack Posobiec to Grant Stinchfield, you'll find all your favorite Rav hosts in one place.
You can listen on Spotify, Apple, Pandora, or Amazon. Rav is now available everywhere you get your podcasts. All you need to do is scan the QR code right now.
Download the iHeart app today and get ready for Real America's Voice.
Scan the QR code and join the Rav movement.
Top prosecutors, the head of the criminal division at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. That person oversees criminal cases in the nation's capital, has resigned. Her name is Denise Chung. She has been in that office since 2000. She departed abruptly after interim U.S. Attorney Ed Martin asked for her resignation when she refused to send an order to a bank to freeze assets. She believed there was not enough evidence to do that. Chung praised her colleagues in her resignation letter this morning for, quote, following the facts and the law and complying with our moral, ethical, and legal obligations. The need to focus on that exact mission, following the facts and the law, guided by ethical obligations, is the subject of a letter from hundreds of former federal prosecutors, including former special counsel Jack Smith. They write this, quote, as prosecutors, we were rightly prohibited from making criminal charging decisions based on someone's political association, activities, or beliefs, or because of our personal feelings about them. Against this backdrop, we have watched with alarm as these values have been tested by recent actions of the department's leadership. Some of you have been ordered to make charging decisions based expressly on considerations other than the facts and the law, including to serve solely political purposes. Several of you have resigned, and others are wondering what will happen to the department we served and revere. To all of you, we communicate this. We salute and admire the courage many of you have already exhibited, and that will guide all of you as you continue to serve the interests of justice. You have responded to ethical challenges of a type no public servant should ever be forced to confront, with principle and conviction, in the finest traditions of the Department of Justice. On the reporting, do we know whose assets she was asked to freeze that she refused to freeze?
Yeah, three sources tell NBC News this had to do with grants that were put out during the Biden administration involving the environment through the Environmental Protection Agency. But what you're talking about ultimately here is the government ordering is the key word here, a bank to freeze assets that no longer in the possession of the federal government. And in order to meet that threshold, there is a line that you would have to meet, right? And so she was not willing. She said that the evidence did not support writing a letter to the bank.
It's Tuesday, 18 February. It's Tuesday, 18 February, year of Lord 2022. You're in the war room. We are packed tonight. Julie Kelly, of course, his resignations. In the D.C. equivalent of the Southern District of New York, the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. There's others. Do we have the clip on the 200 from DHS? Let's go ahead and play that. Also, DHS, things are happening besides Doge. You know, Doge is out there, and they're identifying, I guess, cuts, etc. We need to now we need to bring the Doge cuts and find out what is real and what is Doge. Because we're down now to the hard stuff leading up to the 14th of March. Dave Brett joins. We're going to go through some numbers, but I want to play this. There's two things. You have Doge, then you have President Trump's own administration, the landing teams, the beachhead teams. Major news coming out of the Department of Homeland Security. Let's go ahead and play it.
Hundreds of high-level employees at the Department of Homeland Security this week. That's according to three sources familiar with the matter. The firings come on top of hundreds more general cuts that began at DHS last week. NBC Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley has this exclusive reporting for us. Julia, this is the agency that includes ICE, which we know is very important to President Trump's immigration goals. So what's the goal of these cuts?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it would make sense, Allie. But in this case, they are really trying to take a scalpel to the agency and take out a lot of senior leaders, people who, this is Washington speak, but it's called the Senior Executive Service. Those are people who are very high level, and they are usually in charge of things like policy and strategy. We understand these cuts can be made at ICE, CBP, FEMA, CISA, all across DHS, and there are people who are being taken out not because Doge thinks that they are expendable and not necessary, but they're people that Trump's landing team, the people who arrived the day of his inauguration, think are standing in their way of their policy goals. Sometimes these could be people who aren't necessarily fulfilling what they've been told to do or aren't telling their subordinates to carry it out. It also could be people who just aren't seen as loyal to Trump, and they think that maybe they won't be the best people to carry out these strategies. Obviously, there's a lot of pushback internally. I've spoken to some Biden administration officials who say that to get rid of that number of people at those high levels will really be devastating to the department, just in how they carry out their day-to-day and exactly how people are supposed to report to their bosses. But those who are working on these decisions now say that they think the pain in the short term is worth the gain in the long term when they have everyone in those roles who they think are aligned with Trump's goals. And as you know, there's been a lot of frustration, even from Trump himself, that ICE isn't doing enough to arrest and deport people more quickly, Allie.
Okay, this is very important. Dave Brett joins us. What you're seeing there, so there's two things going on. You have Doge or sending kind of these strike teams into these various parts of the bureaucracy, and what they're doing is that they're coming up with, and they're saying some audits, maybe it's not a full audit, they're finding out where the cash is going, they're coming back making some recommendations. People are being laid off. We don't know totally at what level. There's also some controversy. For instance, they put up, they had an $8 billion savings turn. It was $8 million, but that stuff's going to happen. So they're going, I think they've listed on their site $80 billion so far in their first month, but it hasn't been verified by the cabinet secretaries there, President Trump's cabinet secretaries. So we're getting to Doge in a minute. The key thing is also Doge, I believe, is going to help us with the actually programmatically what we're going to take down, and we need to do that. We need to have some highlights that for the 14th of March. However, what happened today is different and very important. President Trump's landing team, these are the people of the 3,000 that actually go in and hit the deck place running without Senate confirmation. They've been doing analysis and reports. They've come back on DHS and said, hey, there's a couple of hundred, and senior executive service is like the senior most people. I think they go SES 1 to 4, and they're above the GS 12 or 13 grade. These are the senior people. Remember, we tell you there's 2.5 million bureaucrats. There's another 5 million contractors. These are people at the senior levels, and Trump's landing team is coming back and saying, hey, they either don't support your policies, they're too lazy, and or they're going to be what Natalie Winters calls embeds. Therefore, they go and they blew out hundreds of them today. This has rattled the city actually more than Doge, because these are people, this is the administrative and deep state. These are guys eating at the best restaurants. These are men and women that are bringing down $200,000 a year plus expenses. So this city is rattled because they know that Trump has got a team of his own inside. We say landing team, that's the DHS. And let's be blunt. DHS is where, that's all the deportations, the security of border, all that. Dave Brett, when you send a message that your team comes up and it comes up with a couple of hundred names and you're gone, D.C., this is where real estate prices start to drop.
Yeah. Well, I think what you just said, you put your finger on it. This piece, along with Doge, is kind of complementary, right? So they reinforce each other. And then the shocker is that the Republican House and Senate oversight has been derelict for the past couple decades. The Democrats do this regularly, right? They take yards on the field. This is nothing new for them. They own the city. They own every position. They own every agency, all of it. But hang
on. If Doge is correct in what they're saying and putting up, this goes to the thing of where has the House, not just oversight, but the committees themselves.
Yes.
Particularly, now listen, we know that Eli Crane and MTG and Boebert and Matt Gaetz have fought USAID for years, made presentations. But I don't think anybody actually got into the detail of what they've done to suppress information in this country. How did that happen? Did they just go along? Not those guys, but the people? Because we would sit here in the middle of the night and see them outvoted at the subcommittee level all the time. Is that the Republican establishment being controlled opposition? The Democrats know what's going on and just move the ball downfield?
Yeah, well, and we've said it on the show over and over and over. The speaker runs everything. So the rest of the conference has been conditioned over the past few decades. Just either you obey or you don't get to be on the major committees and you won't get any fundraising donations or whatever. Kevin McCarthy, that was the issue, right, with Kevin. And so enough people had heartache over him giving the Pelosi $7 trillion budget. That right there tells you everything you need to know, right? When Kevin McCarthy goes and delivers Pelosi's $7 trillion woke and weaponized budget after Russ' vote, goes line by line by line methodically. And this is what hurts our brain, right? 1.7 trillion cuts he had with woke and weaponized policy. And so our folks, the fundamental problem is Mike Johnson is in a tough spot because he only has a seat or two, but they're worried about that, right? They don't want to lose. And if any of these members takes a tough vote and does real oversight and calls attention to this anything that where the New York Times and Washington Post dumps on you, and my term went back to Charlottesville, et cetera, right? It doesn't matter if it's all false. It works. In the short run, it works for a year or two. And our team, until right now, right, Trump's up there just leading like no one can comprehend. All the business guys back home and I go around the country too. The CEOs, they're not all just pro-MAGA, pro-Trump, but they're all saying, I'm so happy with what he's doing. I mean, it's all over the place. Every city I go to.
What are they happy with?
Just the gridlock. They can just feel the ice breaking, freedom
leadership. A man stepping
again.
into something, right. and making not like Biden, who's home, who's making decisions.
The international piece is huge. It didn't make any sense. Common sense, that's a big theme. And then
you're saying shutting down the war in Ukraine,
yes.
dealing with the Russians today. We're going to bring peace.
Right.
The Panama Canal to Greenland, secure the United States.
Yeah.
The business community kind of gets the logic here.
Right. Oh, they get all the connection of the dots. The problem is the business community might be opposed to some of it, like the border invasion piece, right? The cheap labor. They're addicted to that, and we need them to step up for the sake of the country. I got some charts later on in the show, but the wheels come off as far as labor goes about 1950, 1960. And I think the War Room, everybody knows those dates, right? That something started happening.
What do you mean the wheels come off?
Well, just culturally, right? Church attendance starts going down, public education, God out of the schools, no ethics being taught, the liberal ascendancy.
You mean the 1960s, not in the 1950s?
Yeah, 1960s, yeah.
1960s.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You said 50s. I'm just trying to get you precise, Professor.
Some of the data